She needs a date to her best friend's gala. He wants to settle down. Can they get past their hang-ups to see that they should be together? This is the premise of The Accidental Swipe by me, Y.M. Nelson. This steamy contemporary romance features Jason and Fortune, two people who've given up on love and are urged to use an online dating app to find someone. When they find each other, the attraction is undeniable, but their jaded outlooks on love based on past emotional hurt may keep them from getting together. The Accidental Swipe releases on July 25th, 2023. Go to ymnelson.com for all of the latest details. This is the Nerdy Romantics Podcast, and I'm your host, Y.M. Nelson. Hello, Nerdy Romantics. Today we are talking the Netflix show You, and it is based on the series You by Caroline Kepnes. I believe that's how you say her last name. We will have all that information on the show notes. This is going to be a show discussion / review kind of chat. So there will be spoilers in this. So if you have not seen seasons 1, 2, and 3 of You, then I suggest you go see those. Stop this recording, go see those seasons, and then come back and join us for the discussion. Okay, so before we get into talking about Netflix's series You, as we always do with these discussions, we're going to talk about what we're reading. And usually I don't actually participate in that. But today I am going to participate in that because I'm reading some really cool stuff. And I just happened to watch something that happened to go along with what I was reading. I have just watched, and of course this also has to do with Netflix too, but I've just watched on Netflix this limited series. It's 3 episodes, and it's called The Principles of Pleasure. I absolutely love this series. It's a documentary kind of thing. When I first went into it, I wasn't sure what I was watching, but then right away I knew exactly what I was watching. It is very educational. I really recommend it for cisgender women, all women who identify as women. There are all kinds of women on the series, and they talk about pleasure from the standpoint of women's bodies. They talk about pleasure from the standpoint of our minds and how we get there. They talk about it from the standpoint of relationships. And in a lot of that is a lot of stuff that we really don't talk about a lot of times that we should talk about. It's a lot of stuff that maybe a lot of people didn't really know about their own bodies and didn't know about owning their own pleasure and their own happiness. Obviously, as a romance novel writer, I'm attracted to this, right? But I will say I did learn something that actually is going to help me write a scene that I'm working on right now in one of my works in progress. But also, some of the themes that come up actually coincide with what I'm reading right now, which I happen to be reading, spoiler alert, by Olivia Day. Yes, I did say spoiler alert before, but this is an actual book called Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. And Olivia Dade is, I think she'd be okay with me calling her plus size. She is plus size woman, and she writes romance novels with the heroines being plus size. I started actually reading this for one of our Who Gets an HEA episodes that will be coming up, where we'll talk about plus size main characters. And while this heroine is one where she's actually owning the fact that she is plus size, there are some outward struggles and stuff that happen to her that she has to deal with. That's kind of on the periphery. It's not major, but it is a big part of it, but it's not a major part of it. But it actually goes back to how we look at our bodies, and this particular show, Principles of Pleasure, which is on Netflix, which is also where You, the series, is. That's a whole roundabout way of saying, yeah, I'm reading a lot, and a lot of it has to do with Netflix in some kind of way. But we also have our guest hosts, Dana, Marcie, Pam, and Staci on the line. They're also going to talk about You, but they will also talk about what they are reading right now. So let's start off with, since we have not heard from her in a while, Pam, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me today.
Oh, I'm so happy that you're here. What are you reading right now that you want to tell us about?
I had just briefly mentioned a little while ago, that I met an author here in Atlanta. Her name is Tina Brooks McKinney, and when I met her, I asked her certain books, a part of the books that she's written that she's really loved, or the ones that she's connected to the most, and she mentioned her series called Snap. It's a couple of books in that series, at least so far I've seen. So my goal is to go ahead and to get through both of those books, especially since I've met her in person. I'd love to just kind of read them and maybe go back and get some feedback from her, and then I can give her some feedback about the book. So that's where I am right now.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, so let's talk to Staci next. What are you reading, Staci?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me there. And what I am reading is continuation. I'm still reading the same book I read before, The Black Phone by Joe Hill. It's actually an anthology. It's not really just a novel complete off, so it's different stories. And because they're horror, I've only okay, let me read a couple of stories and then I stop. So it's taking me a little bit longer to read it, because I do need a break from that, because I've had a couple of nightmares after reading them, but I still keep going for it. So it's a good book then.
It's gotta be a good one if it scares you, but you're still going.
Yep, but I need a break after a couple. It's like, okay, don't try to read all this and then watch Candyman on TV and then think you're gonna be okay for the night. I've been trying to just read that and then read news articles and listen to podcasts after that. So it might take me a while to finish up that book.
Yeah, but hey, if it's good, it's good. Okay, so Marcie, how's it going? And what are you reading right now?
Hello, everybody. It's going well. And actually, I'm reading a short story right now, and it's the short story by Margaret Atwood, who is the author of A Handmaid's Tale. And she has one that came out in May called My Evil Mother, and it was a free read for Amazon customers. And I have Kindle Unlimited, so I'm always reading something. And so I'm reading that short story at this moment.
Awesome sauce. How is it? Are you liking it?
I just started, so I don't want to form an opinion yet, but I'll have a follow-up in another review.
All right, cool.
Dana. I have to say to Marcie, when she said Margaret Atwood, I was thinking her next book would be like 2022 or It's Happening Now.
Right? Exactly.
I was like, oh Lord, what is she doing? Right? So I was wondering what was going to be.
Or A Handmaid's Tale, nonfiction. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. So this one is a departure in that it is really a mother-daughter story. I can say that. So it is a mother-daughter story about a mother who gets a prediction at a tarot reading. And so it's not connected to the Handmaid's Tale sagas in that way, although it probably will address some of the same social type issues that she kind of addressed in that story. But this one is much more mother-daughter, which is why I guess it's being offered during the month of May.
Okay. Awesome. I want to hear about
Cool.
that when you're done, Marcie.
Absolutely.
And Dana, what are you reading? And
Look at me just
howdy.
running my mouth. Hello, everybody. So the first thing I wanted to say is that y'all have heard me talk about reading Sherlock Holmes probably forever. I finally finished all 67 hours of that, so I'm not reading that anymore. But I am back to my Douglas, Preston, and Lincoln Child stuff. And so I am reading a book called Mount Dragon. And so it's a little bit different from the Preston and Child stuff that I talked about previously, because I was like really into the Pendergast series. And of course, I've read all 20 some of those books, and I'm just waiting for another one to come out. So this one is kind of a little different, but it's interesting because it's all about this. It kind of reminds me of the whole thing we have going on with COVID, but basically it's about this disease that has gotten out that, or will get out. And if it does get out, it's going to be worse than the flu. At the time, I don't think COVID didn't exist. So it's interesting listening to this because it sounds like they're talking about COVID and it's like really happened. So it's interesting to correlate it to like what's really happened. But it's a little bit of a departure from what I'm used to with them, and that this takes place like in a lab, underground, all this stuff. So it's a little different. I'm not 100% sure if I'm sold on it, but that is where I'm at right now. And I think I'm not really sure how long it is. It's somewhere between 15 and 20 hours. So I'm listening to that. And that's all.
Okay. Wow. I don't know how you do it because I tell you, any book that says COVID or virus or anything, even though it's fiction, I've just been trying to stay away from. And I read one that talked about the pandemic recently, but it wasn't virus focused. So I was like, okay, I can handle this, but wow. You got to let me know how that comes out.
Will do.
So now let's talk about You, the series. First of all, I wasn't sure if I wanted to really talk about this on the podcast because it's really not nerdy and it's really not romantic per se, or at least not the romance that you want to have in your life. But Staci mentioned, hey, should we talk about You on the podcast? And so I thought about it and I said, I don't know. I don't know if my audience is really going to be down for this. And then I saw in a few Facebook groups and stuff on social media that people were talking about the series and people were talking about the books. And I thought, well, even though it's not really nerdy, it's not really romantic in that sense. It's really a thriller, right? It's really more of a thriller, but it's in that whole domestic thriller kind of venue where it's about relationships. So it's kind of, hey, I may not, and it does center around love per se. So it may be something of interest for a romance reader, especially if you're like a romantic suspense reader, because it has all those kinds of things in it. But even though it's not specifically in that genre, but we do read outside of our genres, and this may be something that may be a little bit outside of our genre, but also may be of interest. So I said, you know what, let's do an episode about You. And at that time, all 3 seasons had come out. And so I feel like, we want to talk about all of those seasons, maybe not season by season, but just kind of get a general feel of where it's going. But also for a couple of us, we've been reading the books. I definitely went into this reading the book first. The book hooked me. It had me a little bit unnerved for 3 or 4 days. I was like, nope, no social media, no connection whatsoever for a few days after I read that book. But at the same time, you also feel conflicted because you're rooting for somebody who's basically a serial killer. And you're like, I want him to find love. Maybe not rooting for him, but you feel conflicted. You're like, oh my, but yeah. it's a conflicting feeling. But before we get too much into Joe Goldberg, let's talk about how you found the series. What got you watching it in the beginning? How about we start with Marcie?
I feel like I found out about it through this group, through word of mouth. And it was probably, no, actually, that's not true. I found out about it from Staci because we ended up on a trip where we were watching some of the episodes together. And that's kind of how I got involved. And then we watched the first season. And then after that, I kind of started picking up watching the second and the third season by myself. But the first season, I actually found out about from Staci by word of mouth and by watching it with her, from there catching up and moving on with the rest of the series.
So Staci, how did you find out about it?
Well, Netflix will say recommend stuff, and because I watch stuff about romances and serial killers, I guess they thought, hey, this is the perfect
Yes.
I don't know, but it came up on Netflix, and usually I'll, if it's Netflix, I'm already paying for it, I'll watch episode 1-2 episodes, or like, the L5 podcast will watch a couple of episodes.
Okay.
To see if you like it. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. And I just kept watching it. I mean, it was just fascinating to me, but at the same time, I'm just like, I'm not sure how to, as you said, conflicted. Yes. I'm not rooting for him, but at the same time, I'm like, what?
Right.
And then as you watch it, and then, like Marcie said, you see also people posting stuff out. And I'm seeing stuff as I watch it. I wish someone would look at me like Joe looks at so-and-so. And I was like, do you really?
Yeah, right.
Have you seen what he does? I mean, it just became fascinating for me. And I mean, just to see the way he gets out of stuff, it's like this can only be TV, or if y'all are reading the book, from a book.
Yeah.
Because how he's not gotten caught on anything so far is just, it to me is like the Handmaid's Tale. Mm-hmm. How she's they're in season 6 and she has not had a finger cut off, or eye plucked out,
right?
Nothing. It's the same thing to me for him. He should have had something, should have come up somewhere on somebody's radar that, hey, we did put him in jail. But that's really Netflix. I've never read the book, and really I like the story on TV. I like watching the Netflix show, but not enough for me to go into reading the books, at least. Unless y'all say something different on this call or anything like this. But other than that, right now, I don't see myself reading the books. Yeah. But the show does keep my interest.
Dana, Pam, is that the same thing that did you all learn about this from Staci?
No, because I read the book first.
You read the book first, yes.
I was anticipating the show, but I already knew about it. Because I read things like, what is it, like Lane Moriarty and different things Moriarty, like Amazing Amy, or all that whole girl in the train kind of.
Yeah,
I think
Paula Hawkins, girl on the train.
I
Gone
think all
Girl.
Of that made Audible probably recommend this to me.
Yeah.
And so that's how I saw it. It's funny because I'm just thinking about what Staci just said about how she doesn't know watching the show whether it will make her want to read the book. But the thing I found about the book, so I fell for Joe prior to the show, right? I was excited to see how he'd be played out on Netflix. But before that, there's a level of intimacy you get, because I was listening to an audiobook, because Joe is talking to you. Yeah. I wonder, I don't know if that's enough to make you try it, Staci, but there definitely, it is different having, especially because, a lot of times I listen to it at night while I'm laying down, relaxed, so Joe is having a conversation. He's telling me all this stuff. It's when you say, and I know we'll probably talk about this later, being conflicted. I'm gonna be honest, I really wasn't conflicted until somebody asked me, or somebody mentioned about maybe you should be conflicted. Right. Then I realized, oh my gosh, you're right. Even though I knew he was killing folks, obviously that's part of this.
Yeah.
It didn't bother me. I wasn't like, oh my God, this man, he's, a murderer, he's a stalker. I guess I was like, he was bringing me along with him. And I guess I don't want to say I understood. I don't even think I thought that much about it. Like, people do what has to be done. I don't know.
Exactly.
I mean, that's really what it is. Yeah, because it's like, you know, and I know we'll talk about this, like with Peach, for example, she was going to blow his whole cover. She had to die. So like, I really didn't wrap myself up into the fact that, oh my God, he's a serial killer or anything like that. Because he was just bringing me along for the story. And I was just like, yeah, I get it.
Right,
Peach
exactly.
got on my nerves anyway. So I was
Peach did get on my nerves.
Exactly, Pam.
Peach did get on my nerves. But but she, you know, she's pretty, but she did get on my nerves. She was just she had to go. She did. She had to go.
I mean, to be honest, all of them got on my nerves. Beck got on my I don't think
she did.
It bothered me that much when their story was over.
Right.
Well, how many? Like, I know we were trying to. At least I was trying to watch it instead of just doing an overview. So I did rewatch season 1 and season 2 before this call. I was able to finish those, and I do have to admit, once I rewatched them, my feelings about some of the other characters was like, all of them are awful. Season 1, it's like Paco was the only.
Exactly.
The child.
Right. I think.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead and finish your thought. Now finish up.
No, I was just saying Paco to me was the only one that was like, oh my gosh, that kid. And I think was it Karen, his girlfriend, his rebound after that.
Yeah.
And I was like, those are two, I guess, innocent characters out of the whole thing that I didn't have any kind of negative reaction to, or really, Paco's the only one I actually felt sympathy for. Really, real sympathy for. The other one, girl, I was like, girl, you just need to be happy you out of that relationship, because there was no that didn't come.
Right, you dodged the bullet, friend. You dodged the bullet.
I'm just like, you dodged it. So, but other than that, those are the only two people I actually liked in the whole series once I got, and I want to talk about this later about in season 2 about how they're playing those people that he's interacting with. So, but we haven't gone to season 2 yet, so let me shut up for now.
Marcie, what were you going to say?
I think I have to hold my comment till season 2.
Oh, okay.
Because we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yvonne, I can go ahead and mention it real quick. Just about Paco, as Staci was talking about Paco, because I did feel bad for him, but I also felt like Joe was taking him into his world. He was reading all these different books and looking at all these different characters, and he was getting all these ideas. And then when it got to the point where Ron, the boy, his mom's boyfriend, I mean, he hated him, which rightfully so.
Right.
But I could see from all that happened with him, and then of course he's dying later, that I could see Paco turning into another Joe. And so I felt so bad for him that he had this good guy, quote unquote, who was really there to try to help and support him, but he was pulling him into this whole nother life. And he's probably going to take that, forward into his own life as he grows up. So that made me sad.
Yeah.
I did think, he might turn into another Joe. I want to say real quick, a disclaimer for me, because I read the books and watched the show, y'all, I may say stuff that's crossed over and jacked up, just call me out on it, only because they go kind of all over the place in different ways, and I may be confused. So what I was going to say is I don't believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the whole Paco stuff was in the book. I don't remember the kid.
It was not in the book that I can remember. No, it wasn't.
So that's interesting because it makes me then go back to Staci's thing. So then who were any of the positive or innocent characters? I don't even know. I don't know if there were any.
Karen was in the book, though.
Besides her.
Yeah.
And the guy who worked in the bookstore?
Named Karen, but she was in the book.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
the other guy who worked in the bookstore.
Yeah, the other guy,
Yeah, the other guy. I don't remember his name.
And it's funny too, because I think if I remember correctly, in either it's book 1 or book 2, the other guy who worked at the bookstore, he was not a nice person either, but he wasn't, bad. He was just like, he was just kind of like, why am I in this bookstore? And I ditto on what Dana said about the books and the show, right? Because and we were talking about this before the recording, but book 1 and season 1 are pretty similar. And that's probably because book 1 was out, and and they had source material and they started it off, and so book 1, season 1 are pretty similar. Book 2 and season 2 are not. They're sort of similar. It almost feels like they started season 2 halfway through book 2, because in book 2, he does not leave and go to LA until halfway through the book. And it's not for the same reason that he does on the show.
And I feel like for me, maybe
season 3 is just, and book 3 are really different.
I think for me, after Queen Sugar, I stopped depending on the book and the series to be anything alike. And so I think for me, that's not necessarily as important, because I realized that to make something television worthy, a lot of times it's the concept that got sold. It's not every written word in the book. So I think for me, I'm okay if they diverge. I don't necessarily expect that anymore, because in so many things, Game of Thrones, like I think by now we've all been thrown off by that's not how it was written. So I think I stopped depending on the two, and I really do try to end up looking at things independently, just because that seems to be happening more and more these days, that what you read is not what you see. So I almost treat them as if they're not even the same product anymore. And I will say that Queen Sugar really was the one that really did it for me.
But in that case, I really thought that, off topic a little bit, Queen Sugar, the show, to me was better than the book, more interesting to me.
Now it was, but it's not the book. But it's nothing like the book.
But I think sometimes you feel
for the last name and the title.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times it might feel a little bit different if you really enjoyed the book so much that you want to see it represented in the show. And then you can kind of get this. You might get disappointed depending on how they do that show. In this case, it's
right.
So wait,
I don't.
But that's why I started separating them into two different products, and I just try to think of them not connected anymore.
So I didn't care that they weren't connected. I'm just saying it's confusing. So, because they're still connected enough that they're the same story, but when you change like little nuances in, I'm having to talk about, I'm gonna get confused. But I think, I don't mind. Here's my thing. I don't mind when the story doesn't follow what was written, but when it doesn't make any sense. So I'll give an example of something I was disappointed in with Misery by Stephen King. So I read the book first, and she does not hobble the guy just by hitting his foot. His foot is cut off.
Exactly. Completely.
I don't know why in the movie, and I don't know what it was rated back then a long time ago, but I don't know why that choice was made. Like I'm expecting to see some, so
everybody's bloodthirst is you.
Yeah, whatever. Hey, but to me it made more sense, because I felt like that would be a more permanent injury than basically what looked like the equivalent of him just having his ankle broken. But so when it does that, when it makes a change and I don't necessarily get it and it doesn't make it better, sometimes I may question that. But at the end of the day, like, I don't care. I do wonder if they put some of this stuff in, like with Paco for Joe and stuff, to make him a more likable character. Maybe they thought he needed some redeeming qualities about him. So here he has somebody, who's innocent and he's caring about him. And in this case, he's not, killing somebody just because he loves them and can't have them, or they get in the way of whoever he's stalking. But, because this person is abusing this family. So, and if you see that he also did that in another season with the girl.
Right,
that's where I was going. So since we're moving on, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things they do.
Soften him a little
exactly. Bit. They do that to endear him to us and to humanize him in the midst of all this other stuff. But look how he cares about children. Mm-hmm. Look how he treats the vulnerable, the innocent. And so I do think that they use that as a humanizer feature, Dana. I do.
So maybe in season 3, same thing with Henry, his son.
Yeah, exactly.
And just, in the end, sending him on to that couple, to give him a better life than what he and Love could have ever given him. But I guess it does kind of show that softer side or a caring side to him that kind of opens his character up a little bit more.
I think that's what they do to try to do that that conflict they were trying to say, do we want to root for him or not? It's
You make me
by
like
doing
him.
those things, by making him likable, like,
Right.
oh, he's trying to do the right thing, but just stuff comes in the way. He's got to kill people. And it's like, no, I don't think that's how life works, but we're going to let you have it for this show. So, I mean, we have, like I said, Paco, and then we let our own Ellie, and they keep, I'm just wondering, in the book, do they keep having him doing the flashbacks of when he was a kid on in the book? Do they actually do the flashbacks?
In the first book, they did a lot of flashbacks because Mr. Mooney had a lot bigger part. You have to see his whole backstory to kind of understand why he made that cage and all of that kind of stuff. He has a big part in that, definitely in the first book. You agree, Dana?
Yeah, because I was going to ask, when do they talk about Joe having been in the cage? So is this,
they talk about in the first one? They talk about in the first one because they mention it, because he talks about it, has a flashback of being in that cage because of Mr. Mooney putting them in there or tricking them in there.
And was he dead at that time? Like, is in the show, is because I feel like in the book Mooney was still alive because he borrows his car.
Yeah,
Mooney was alive the first season. He was alive because he takes was it Beck there to visit him.
Okay. I agree. I do feel like in the book there was definitely more of him. But don't ask me to tell you exactly what, when, and why, because I don't know. But I do feel like he was a bigger character, because I feel like in the show it was just flashbacks. That's why I asked if he was still alive in this show, because I just felt like a lot of it was just, I don't know. I'll be honest.
You watched by the end of it, he was a stroke. So when he came to visit him, he couldn't talk or anything. So it was just, and also made him look to at least Beck sympathetic until you see what Mooney and all he's doing. But
what he really
takes care of this. Make sure Mr. Mooney is okay.
I was going to say, so one of the things, since we're talking about stuff not, when I found out that Joe was going to have a baby and he was going to move and live in suburbia or whatever, I was like, oh, this show is over. Like, because to me, I was like, it jumped the shark. This cannot be Joe. Joe is not a family man. We are not settling down in suburbs. This is not what we do. Especially with a baby and all of this stuff. And I was really worried about where this series was going to end up. The same way I was, like, for anybody who's watched Dexter, when Dexter decided he was going to have a family and take on these, I was like, what? This is not who these characters are. And I have to give it up to Netflix and the writers and everybody, because I felt like they actually brought it back home. I was so proud, and I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I was so proud at the end when Joe gave up the kid, because I was like, y'all, we can't continue this route. And y'all have heard me say it before. It's like in The Walking Dead, when they have babies or a baby, you're not going to be able to keep that baby quiet. That baby is going to interfere with this whole story. It has got to go, or you're going to be making, you're going to be faking it through, and we're going to know this doesn't make any sense. So I was so happy when Joe let go of the child. He is not a daddy.
Exactly. Even with the children that he quote unquote tries to rescue, he farms them off. Like, he doesn't keep his kids with him. It's pretty clear that he's not fully able to form the kind of attachment you need to be a full parent. So I too was glad to see that he wasn't going to drag a child into that hiding and turn another child into another him. So I was glad about that part as well. I was interested in how they were going to do suburbia. I wasn't as scared, but I was interested to see. But I'm gonna say that they tore that whole neighborhood up. Like, they tore two people move in with a baby and tear an entire community to shreds in what? Less than a year. Henry didn't even make it to his first birthday. So that part was interesting. Like, if anyone could find the cracks in any relationship, it was the two of them, and they found a million and just devoured this whole. I felt that's really what made me feel the worst was, these people were at least status quo before they got there, but they blew up entire lives in less than a year.
But when you look at Sherry and Carrie, the couple, those instigators, how I felt about them. I didn't really like them. And then I felt like in the end, they were trying to just make money out of this whole mess of things that happened. With them, they were already messing up the neighborhood. And it was like when Joe and love came in, I mean, yeah, it kind of blew everything else up, but they were already just nosy bodies in
I
the
mean, they
way.
were nosy bodies, but they
Yeah.
weren't, dead and maimed and
I
and
got you.
and divorced and
It
missing.
was just
And
influences. They
you
were
see what I'm saying?
influencing the
Like they
people
had,
Yeah, but
around
I
them.
think,
Yeah.
but I kind of we've all skipped them at season 2, but
I know, that's
in a
what I
way.
thought. I'm sorry, Sarah. I
Um,
knew I was jumping.
Yeah.
oops, my bad.
Well, I mean, that's fine, but I'm just saying, like, one of the things that I really wanted to talk about was how when we finally see love, when he meets love. So the first season, his whole thing was about Beck, or Guinevere Beck, and how, she was just not as messed up as him because she wasn't killing folk, but she had her own issues too. And I think, like, if you see the show, he idealizes everybody he falls for. So we see in Beck that he idealized everything, even though she lied about her father, she cheated. I mean, she did all this other stuff, and I'm not nothing that deserves what happened to in the end. But she wasn't perfect. And then we see love, and we find out how love is. How love is. But when he meets love, he idealizes her too. By the end of it, love is to me like a mirror back at him. I mean, it's just a female version of him. But how they played it off in the TV show is they make his kills seem justifiable and hers to be she's crazy.
She's crazy, yeah.
And it's just, and I mean, they made all his like, oh yeah, he had to do this. You did not have to put people in cages. You did not have to kill these folks. You didn't have to do all that. But they made it so that he seems like the stable person, like he's all right, and she's just off the rails. And I mean, granted, she is, but so is he. But how they make it look, how they made him look sympathetic, and how she wasn't. Her stuff was purely, she was killing people to be killing people. And I was like, she was obsessive about him, like he'd be obsessive about her, until she finds out that she is not his idealized version of who she thought it was. She was actually him.
Okay, and I think what that proves is what it proves about all of us as an audience. That in a relationship, one manic person, one person is acceptable, but two people is more than any of us can stomach. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of what happened. Like we had all, and we talk about it from the beginning, we had all managed to understand and wrap our minds around Joe, but what we couldn't do was wrap around two Joes. So there could be Joe and Love doing the same thing and being the same person, because that's more than we can stomach in life as well. And I think for him, you hit the nail on the head, Staci. He needed someone. He idealized the women in his life as perfect, as the good that he was not. So I think the minute he realized that Love was not the good that he was trying, because he kept thinking that he found someone good enough he could change, like he would be better because she was better. But when she's psychotic too, what's the inspiration to change? And I think that's why he was so disenchanted by her, is because he had put her on that pedestal. He had envisioned that she was the perfect woman that he could be better for. But then when she didn't need him to be better because she was quite unstable herself,
understood, but she also is the only one who
he didn't want to be understood. He didn't want to be understood. He wanted someone who would force him out of himself. And I think that's the problem. Sometimes in relationships, we want somebody who we can aspire to be better for, instead of somebody who accepts us as we are in this moment, because we don't either. He was conflicted about his own self. I think a lot of times he was trying not to be his worst self. And so he was looking for someone who could inspire in him a continuous desire to be his best self. And if your partner isn't that person, and I'm not saying he's right, he is crazy. But I think that's also part of why they didn't work, and why he was so out of sorts when he realized that she was just as bad as he was. Because then who's going to try to make us better for Henry? Like, and how long can I keep making myself better for Henry, knowing that that's really who I am, if she's not helping too? Like, who's left?
So he wants a woman who's going to try to fix him. The one thing that we always
he never wanted them to fix him, but he wanted them to be someone he wanted to fix himself for. He needed
not her do, but him do.
Right. He needed to do it, but he was doing it. Remember, he kept saying, I'm going to be better for you, Love. I'm going to move to the suburbs for you and for Henry. It was always that he needed
Henrietta,
someone.
yeah.
I know, right? Henrietta,
So-
whatever her name was gonna be. He needed someone to inspire him to try to be different.
So
And once she wasn't that person, then I think he was like, and then after that, she then complicated his life by being worse than him and not even being as experienced in covering things up. So then
So
she
that's
not
what I
only
was going to say.
dragged
Did
him
that
into
not
it and
mess that
devolved
up
into
though?
foolishness.
I thought she was sloppy, and don't get
Yes.
me wrong.
Oh,
Miss
And
Marian
really
was-
sloppy.
I was on
impetuous
Joe's,
and just
but
I
that's the
think-
part
yeah.
that bothered me the most.
That
Is her
was.
sloppiness. Like,
But
you
I
don't
think
get
she
us
could
in
be.
jail.
Well, I think that's her privilege because she's been rich enough that, hey, somebody's gonna cover up this mess. So I mean, she's been doing it because I mean, we saw the flashbacks. She killed her brother, the babysitter, who
Right.
Oh,
was
yeah,
abusive,
that's
but
right.
she started out that and they covered it up. And
Which means she's been crazier longer than Joe, for what we know, because Joe was an adult. Like, I don't know how Joe was an
he
adult
killed his
for his first kid.
dad or stepdad or whoever. He did that,
I
but
forgot the little.
but help. But saying for his mom, because it was abusive or whatever. But she also said the same thing, that the woman was abusive to her brother. I mean,
her brother,
sexual abuse to her brother.
So if we go back to what Marcie was talking about in terms of the women in his life that he wanted to be better for, when you look at it, it goes back to those two Black women that was in his life, to me, are the only ones that really seem to be that example to him, but he didn't even stay with them.
I don't think Joe can
Right.
stay with anybody. I don't think there's any long-term relationship that's going to happen with Joe. Like, he is not going to be because as soon as they move to the suburbs, he sees some chick through the crack and now he's obsessed with her. I don't think there's ever going to be somebody who is going to be the one for him, and that's just obsession is his life. That's what makes him tick. I feel like that's what he needs, and so I don't
He
feel like
loves
there's
from
ever going to be a
afar.
time.
Yes,
Yeah, I don't
Right.
think
Yes,
it's like
from
once he
afar.
has
Pam,
it,
you
he's
get
gonna
it.
lose interest in it.
But I
Yeah,
do think, Pam, you're
Yeah.
right in that they were the two that were truly good in a way that, like, he didn't find out something terrible about them later. Like, remember how he felt when he thought that the librarian was a bad mom, like when he first started reading about her before he realized that it was a smear campaign by her husband?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
remember how he almost flipped on her, but then when he realized that she was really being taken advantage of. But so I think that they were just truly good people,
Mhm.
and I think that he treated them the same way he treated the children. Like, right?
Mhm.
Like, I need to get them out of my life, out of
Gotcha.
this fear, out of this muck and mire. But I think when he finds out that the women that he's chosen have a flaw in his mind, I think he's like, well, you get what you get.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to point out that both of the that Karen and Marianne were both Black women, but they were.
well, no, I mean, they
in-
were.
in-
It was
in
fine.
the book.
You
In
knew
the
who
book.
you
They
were
were.
talking about.
They were on the show. In the
Yeah,
book,
exactly, in this case,
in the
yeah.
book, Marianne is actually Mary Kay, and she is not Black, but yeah.
Okay, that's kind of cool. Okay.
But it's funny because as I'm hearing it and thinking about it, if he had stayed with either one of those, I probably would stop watching the show, because I'm glad that they would have been happy and maybe things would have worked out, but I didn't want to see that. So again, like, the way Joe is thriving on this, that's how I thrive on the show. I need him to be crazy. But I just think it was funny with Love. Like, Love actually physically upset me. Like, I wanted to choke her. Like, she was just like a character that you've had characters where these people are acting. And all I can say is she did a fantastic job, because in my mind I was like, this is probably who she is in real life. Anyway, she just did such a good job, but I could not stand her. But if you ask me, and this goes back to the original question, Dana, how can you feel that way about her but not Joe? I totally don't see that with Joe. Like, I know mentally that, like I said earlier, that he's killing people, she's killing people. Neither one of them are good people for that. But I do not compare them to each other at all. I just don't.
Yeah.
And I think, just like you were saying, how we look at stuff, we're taking a side. We have to pick a side. Frankly, I knew Joe first. I know how his mind thinks, in my mind anyway. And I feel him. I understand him. She just seemed like a crazy woman out of this, like, she felt like the stalker that I guess I never really look at Joe as. He's just misunderstood. And this is why we have all these problems in the world. Because somewhere was like, no, he's just misunderstood. Y'all don't understand. And then they go off and start murdering folks. So, I don't know.
And it doesn't really help that, in the book, he does have this quality that makes him seem a little less crazy, if you will, and a little more endearing. I agree with Dana as far as that book goes, because he is kind of talking to you. This is like the first chapter of book 3, and this is a advanced copy, so this is probably not exactly how it is in the actual copy that went out, but he says things like this. I think you're the one I spoke to on the phone, the librarian with the voice so soft that I went out and bought myself a cashmere sweater. Warm, safe. You called me 3 days ago to confirm my new job at Bainbridge Library. The call was meant to be short, perfunctory. You, Mary Kay DeMarco, branch manager. Me, Joe Goldberg, volunteer. But there was chemistry. We had a couple of laughs. I mean, this is... he's connected to me too much in this book, right?
You make me want to read it the way you read that.
How you read his voice.
Because reading it to me, hearing you say it's like one thing. If I was reading, I was like, you crazy ass. I
know his voice.
Which is why I need to listen to the audio.
That's why
you have to listen to the audio.
Yeah.
Because that might be the best bet. Because if I was reading that, I was like, you are crazy.
I thought the narrator and the guy in the show were the same person, because they really do, to me anyway, sound similar. Like to the point like I'm not even,
okay.
But they're they're two very different people. But his voice, what I was going to say is, so this is something that happens when you actually see your books come true. How you envision him in the book versus what he looks like when we actually see the Netflix show. On the book, again, like you were just saying, how he's talking to you, he's attractive. And not in my mind, I'm like, oh, is he a hunky, Hollywood movie star? He's a regular Joe. But he's just like, he's calming. He's somebody, you want to lean your head on his shoulder and just whatever. But the way he talks to you, I'm telling you have to listen to the audio. But I thought it was funny to see him in person, because he looks like a plain old average guy you will walk past on your way to, wherever you were going, bus stop, whatever. And I like that. They did not go out of the way. So we're not liking Joe because of what he looks like at all. Like in my mind anyway. I don't know how y'all feel. But
in your mind, but you have now ticked off a lot of Gossip Girl, old school Gossip Girl.
Why was I going there? I was really going there. I loved him.
I didn't say he was ugly, because he's not, but he does not look, he is, hello, have y'all saw him with his shirt off, okay? Show me an ab. Like it was just a hairy white man.
For me, I will say I don't like hairy dudes.
I don't either.
Well, I think Dana's saying that
talk about that.
I think Dana's saying that he's no, was it Chris Hemsworth? He's not that kind of person.
Gotcha.
Okay, we got it.
Yeah, super beautiful.
Okay. But he's not like somebody I'm going to be turned around like to see.
Yeah, we get it.
Right.
He's no Henry Cavill. He's no
Thor. But I like that, because I felt like that, again, is how I felt with him in the book. I got to know Joe for who he is as a person. I sound crazy. But yeah, I was happy to see that they didn't try. In my mind, I didn't watch Gossip Girl. So y'all, he may have been real high up there. I don't know. And again, he didn't look bad. He just looked like a regular person. Which is good, which is, what I would want him to look. And that's how it was in the book. Like they never made him seem super hunky or, anything unrealistic at all in the book. So I just thought that was interesting, but you should listen to it.
Yeah. You is narrated by Santino Fontana, who is not Penn Badgley, the actor.
He's the guy from the show. I know you watched the show. Oh my God. They were singing Girlfriend. Yeah, because he played Greg, I think, in Girlfriend.
My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend?
Yes, yes. I love that show. I don't know if y'all saw it.
No.
But it was great.
I'm going to look them up.
It was on the CW. Yeah,
it was on the CW. I've seen a couple of episodes, yeah.
Yes. I like it.
Okay, and a little bit off topic. One of the characters that I really liked on season 2 was, I think you put in there, Will Bettelheim.
Bettelheim, yes.
Bettelheim. I probably guess I like the actor because he played the Penguin on Gotham.
Yes, yes, he did, and he played that well.
And he did. And so when I saw him, I was like, okay, but this whole therapy session, while he was in the cage, did he do that in the book? I'm just wondering because
So in the book, there is no Will Bettelheim in the book, as far as I can remember.
Well, then I'm going to say thank you to the writers in the writer's room because I agree with Staci. I liked him. And I liked him when he was in the box. And I liked him when he called him as like a counselor and a friend. I liked that character. So I'm glad that he got written in.
And so I think it's the same thing. He's a Paco then, as in trying to humanize him even more. Because I mean, they did it somewhat with Ellie, but I think with him, with Will and Paco, they did it to make him more human and sympathetic. At least to me, that's how it felt. Like how he's trying to figure a way to keep him alive, or I'm not going to kill him. I'm not going to kill him. I'm get all this stuff, have him done. Although he did bring the what was it? The contract killer said, "Well, here's Will. You can have him."
Right.
So he was willing to give him up. But
and I think with Ellie, once Love killed her sister, it was less of a positive vibe around her.
Yeah,
he was
felt
always
compelled,
estranged after that. Like there was a distance, a disconnect there. So I think they needed Will as someone that he had let go, that was a success in his own quote unquote decision making. And so I think that because he couldn't save the sister, like that all was a crap show.
Yeah, he just gave her some money.
He felt
instead.
so bad.
Yeah,
and
he just gave her some money and said, "Go."
Yeah,
but didn't he say that he was gonna keep sending money to her wherever?
Yes,
remember he did all the.
So
I
think it really hurt him. Definitely that he couldn't help her anymore.
Yeah, and he took every time he took a book job, then he would send that money to her. That's the money he used to send to her.
I have a question. Maybe you all can help me with this. And maybe I just fell asleep on a piece of this in season 1. When, of course, Beck dies close to the end, but then her book all of a sudden becomes a bestseller. Where did the book come from? Did he decide to publish the book? Joe, that is?
Yes, because he put the envelope into the post office thing.
Yeah.
Okay, I must have fell asleep on that piece. Sorry, but
you would have had if y'all hadn't seen it.
Yeah, I was just wondering where it came from. I mean, obviously she wrote it while she was in the cage, but yeah, all of a sudden for it to become such a big deal, and I guess it worked out well for him because he wanted to get Dr. Nikki out of the way.
Yeah,
but yeah, I was just wondering how it happened. So that's helpful because I obviously missed that. And Dr. Nikki, I didn't like him anyway, even though he was a very slim character in the midst of all of that.
Yeah, but, I didn't like him either.
He seemed to be abusive as well. So to a degree.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And for them to be a therapist, to be
heal thyself.
Right.
That was his way of giving her therapy.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He gave her that therapy.
Okay. We talked a lot about a lot of different things, but we talked a significant amount about Joe and how we feel about Joe. And I will say, to just kind of cap that on the end for the book readers, I think for us, that's kind of what makes us kind of inoculated from the serial killer part of Joe, is when we actually read the words and hear the words, because there was a lot of talk in the writing world about this book being written in second person, which is not written in second person. It's written in first person. It's written in very, 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 very close first person because we are in his mind. But because you are in his mind, you kind of root for him. So does anybody have anything else they want to say about Joe specifically? Because now I want to talk about Love and why we don't like Love, who we meet in season 2.
Joe is a quality man, and anybody who has him will be lucky.
Joe will stand up for you.
I didn't like his stalkerish tendencies when he stopped Beck that whole time. And had
Yeah.
all her stuff.
Anybody,
Ooh.
but I mean,
So
Invasion.
in the book, Pam, in
uh,
the book, that's the creepy. That is actually the creepier, bro. That's creepier than him killing people in the
Yeah.
book. Him doing that stalking. That is what creeped me out about because I was like, I need to turn off all my social media.
Oh,
Of course, that didn't last,
okay.
but
Change my
that's
passwords and everything.
exactly, exactly. That was the creepiest thing, and it looked like that pretty much. I got the same feeling when I was watching it that first season that was the creepiest thing that he was, stalking her like that. And but then, you get into season 2 with Joe and he's like, okay, I'm done with New York. I'm going to LA. Of course, like I said, book 2 it's a whole different reason. He's kind of forced to LA in a certain sense because he's actually trying to chase Amy Adams. What do we think about Joe in respect to Love in season 2? What do we think about that whole Joe Love dynamic?
First, I want to say I felt like Love came with a lot of baggage. So I don't know if it was as evident in the show as the book, but like 40, her brother got on my last freaking nerves.
Oh, he was
oh
awful.
yes, that was he was bad in both, I guess.
Yeah.
And the need that she had to be his protector through all of this. Like, I mean, I guess I could see how over time maybe Love became who she is or who she was as a person in terms of her craziness. Because I don't know, like her, okay, so Love's parents, and y'all again, correct me if I'm wrong, but they seem to like, I guess mom seemed to, I don't know, I imagine in my mind, because they had just growing up that they didn't have a close relationship so much with their parents. I mean, I know the mom seems to be pretty active now, I guess, and so I feel like Love felt like she, I guess, was kind of parenting 40. I don't know if y'all felt that.
Yeah.
I feel like they were twins, and they say that it felt like she was parenting, but at the same time, I think a lot of it, she caused the problems with 40 by killing that woman.
But she killed him.
I don't think
she killed her in his defense. I thought.
Well, no, she killed him in her perceived defense. What
and she put
didn't
the knife
understand.
in his hand.
Exactly. So I think, but I will say, as a twin, I understand the protective nature, especially when they were younger. There is a different connection that you have to your twin than even siblings would often recognize. And I think that when they were younger and both immature, his pain was something that she felt almost as deeply. And she thought the only way to get him to not be in pain was to kill the lady. He not realizing that his heartbreak was just life, like not realizing that it wasn't abuse, it was heartbreak. I think she didn't understand the situation he had been in, and she didn't ask no questions first. She just went out and did what she thought would stop his pain. Unfortunately, it caused more pain for him, and it caused a lot of guilt for him. And while she was able to just chalk it all up to doing what she had to do, he was not able to chalk it up to that's life happens.
But I also think
it just caused a spiral.
So remind me, because I don't remember, guys. So he was in love with the babysitter or whatever,
and he was still underage. So that's
abuse. That's what I was getting ready to say. I thought he was underage.
But
he was underage.
He was underage, but he was in love with her. He had a crush on her.
But would we have felt differently if he had been a girl and was? I mean,
yeah, because that's still abuse.
But the difference is he had a perceived love for her, not that she was a predator. But all that Love saw was that she had taken advantage of her brother, and she did. But he did not perceive it that way, and that's what Love didn't understand at the time. So when she killed her, she didn't realize what that would do to him, who, by killing someone he had imagined that he loved, right? That didn't solve it for him. It didn't, by removing her from his life, it didn't make it better for him. It just made his life worse because they were both too immature and their parents were both too far removed to even notice any of it happening. And then they tried to cover it all up and tried to force him to feel better and try to force her just not to say anything. And then they created a dynamic that years later had an addict and a enabler growing up together and becoming more toxic by the year. And that's where they were when we met them. She was a chronic enabler and he was a spiraling addict.
I mean, I still disagree about the whole. Yeah, he might perceive it. I mean, he may perceive it as love. That's again still abuse. But
I'm not saying it was a love story. I'm saying
I'm not saying that you're saying
and
that.
they needed to. I'm saying that it should have been him getting therapy, her getting therapy, them working through all that had happened, became mom drinking more, dad being gone more, and them raising themselves. Like, I'm saying that it evolved, but I also think a lot of it just had to do with both of them being young when it happened, because even at the end when he's drinking and telling his side of it, he's still saying, I loved her. No one ever gave him the chance to reconcile what had happened to him. Everybody just kept telling him to push it away, that not to think about it, not to whatever. And so they never gave him a chance to reconcile what happened to him. And I think that was what kept him in that spiral, is because everybody made all these decisions. No one ever spoke to him. And then nobody got anybody any help after it all happened. They just told him to
So I definitely feel
on.
like I agree that was probably the spark. I just would be, and I don't think you're saying this, Marcie, but I just would be hesitant to be like, well, she started it. I mean, I guess technically, but that spark would have started regardless, because either she would have left, the parents would have killed her, she would have gone to jail. Something. Heartbreak was his future with her. It was not.
Oh, I agree. I think the therapy should have followed the heartbreak.
But I think the follow-up is the problem.
Well, I think the fact that she killed the lady and put the knife in his hand to make him think he killed her.
He did it.
Exactly.
But that to me reminds of who was it, Maya Angelou, who said who was abused, and then when she spoke about the abuser died or killed and she quit talking, that put what happened to him puts me in mind of that.
Yeah, that was
right.
Maya
That's what I'm
Angelou.
saying. And they never got them any therapy. They never, all they did was the mama started drinking more, the daddy started being away more, and they expected those kids to somehow heal themselves. Yeah. And what happened instead was she became an enabler and he became an addict. And then they grew up in those roles in this bigger family structure until it was nothing but toxic.
Yeah.
And then Joe walks into this. Any other family would have probably been better than this one.
Oh yeah, there's a lot to
exactly.
And I feel like in the book, the 40 was even worse. Thank you.
Oh yeah, he was totally worse. Yes.
How did you make him worse?
Good Lord.
Yes, he was.
He was annoying to me as somebody who was just reading the book. Like he got on my nerves, especially. I like how he was even down to, and I don't know how often he said this, but that old sport was in the book like 999
right,
times.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it just really like that's one of the things that stands out to me from the book is how many times literally it was in there so much. I was like, okay, from an author's perspective, this is too much. Like we get it. Like, please stop doing this.
And then too, you see that enabler kind of thing going on with Love in the show, but in the book, she's annoyed as well as enabling. So that kind of heaps it on because
that comes.
They have in the book, they have like this whole summer or whatever, and Love is like torn between having to go to Vegas or whatever and drag drunk 40 out and actually spending time with Joe, who she actually, said, she's in love with and all this other kind of stuff. So it just kind of, as you're reading, kind of heaps it on. We see in the show, Joe is drugged and, in one of 40 shenanigans, but in the book, he's in a couple of short 40 shenanigans, 40 does a couple of things and Joe is like, okay, I'm gonna have to deal with this kind of thing. So it ups the whole 40 being annoying kind of thing.
And he definitely was. I mean, he was a child.
He was.
You don't ever want to be in a movie and be like, I hate to say this, but it might be better that he was gone. I mean, but at one moment I was like, whew. Because the emotional journey he was taking us on, I feel like sometimes that was even more traumatic than what Joe was taking us through. And I don't know if it was because it was different or I was just used to Joe's crazy by then and this whole different crazy was too much. But it was a lot of, I think all three of them in that one season was a lot.
Yes.
It was a lot.
When we
But
talk
at the
about
It
end,
is
but-
in the book too. Yeah.
yeah,
But at the end, he spoke the 40 did speak the truth. He was like, you don't need to be a mother. I mean, at the end, you saw that he did understand more than we thought he was seeing, because he kind of he actually kind of said that I realize now that you killed her, not me. I may have been the cause of her death because of you, but I didn't kill her myself. That girlfriend, that babysitter. But
Right.
that whole thing, you say, why are you trying to bring a child into this shit show that we have that we call a family? Because he was real. And once you talk about, the mom, the dad, Love, Joe, he's like, why? There's no way none of these people are gonna be good parents. Even at the end, he did have some clarity, even though for most of it, except for that part at the end, he was awful. But at the end, it's like, well, he was awful, but he at least saw what was right on the wall when it came to, should you bring a child into this?
Yeah.
He's like, no.
Which
Yeah.
makes it even
Like,
more
break the cycle.
ridiculous that she then goes on to name the child after him. And I couldn't tell if that was a tribute or an insult, because Lord knows he wouldn't have wanted it to be named after him.
Right. Or maybe just her still being enabling. She couldn't let him go. She could not as much as
Yeah.
as much as havoc as he caused, she could not let him go. And I think that's
well,
a big part of why.
well, you were just talking about the relationship between Joe and Love. You were asked at the beginning at this next piece. It felt like the whole time Love was just forcing people to love her. I mean, and I even wondered if Joe really loved her, or was it just because of the way she was almost manipulating him? And she's done that with so many people that it was like, I'm going to force you to love me. You're going to love me.
Right.
And I think that just also played into the craziness that was in her. Because it didn't turn out the way she thought it was going to turn out. I was just wondering, the other piece that was missing, I know in the show, they briefly talked about, was it her ex, the one who was sick or something? I don't know if y'all remember that.
Her
Yeah.
husband who
The
had
husband,
passed.
yeah.
Her husband, yeah.
That
And-
she killed.
Hey, did she kill him?
She did.
Yeah, she
yeah.
did.
Because he was gonna leave her because she was
Her
crazy.
first, yeah.
And she wanted to force him to love her too. It's just, she had that twisted mindset. So I don't know if Joe really loved her, or if it just was that she was going to force him to love her.
But at the same time, he does the same thing in a way, trying to be the perfect boyfriend to make people fall in love with him.
Absolutely.
Right.
So I mean, they're doing the same thing, just different ways, and we tend to approve his way more than hers, but they're doing the same thing.
And I always thought that he loved the idea of her. I don't think he loved her. I think he loved the idealized version of her he had in his mind.
Yeah.
I do think she toxically loved him because she saw in him a mirror to herself. And I think she thought in her mind, if he sees that I'm just like him, then he'll love me because he'll know that I understand him. The one piece she miscalculated was that he wouldn't want that version of her. And I think that's really what devastated her, was when he didn't want the real version of love. He wanted the idealized version that she had sold to him.
And a little bit off topic, but when you talked about the baby hearing, they call him 40. When I was watching the show, the mom says, oh yes, and whatever she went to shop said he was the reincarnation of 40. And I was like, oh God, 40, I'm sorry, they just sent you back to hell. It was just awful. That was really the reincarnated 40. They sent you right back.
Even he didn't want that. That was even he wouldn't have wanted that. He was like, please don't.
That's why he's crying all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Every time Joe picked him up.
Well, I think babies can sense when you're tense around them, and since he was still conflicted did he want a son when he had been expecting a daughter? How was he like? I think babies can sense that when you touch them, and the baby was like, "Oh, I'm not for this." Yeah, and that you might not like them either.
Yeah.
Well, here's a question: do we think Mama liked the baby that much, or was it just a way to get Joe to stay?
I think it was a way to get Joe to stay.
Because I didn't feel
really
too much motherliness.
I think it was part of her I want to have my family thing, and that was it. Because she said she used protection with whoever that guy was, because she said that. So that means she wasn't using anyone with Joe. And I think once she realized that's the man she wants,
I think, that was part of her, to me, part of her plan for their family. She wanted a family with him, or wanted a relationship with him. And I think that's part of it was that said she stalked him as much as he stalked her. And I think she would see how he was acting with Ellie and those kind of things. And she's like, hey, I can get him with this. Might be my thing, my ace in the hole for him.
Part of me thinks she was trying to, with the baby, have the kind of love she thought she deserved from her parents. So part of me thought that maybe she did love the baby as more than
I think she loves the baby. I thought she
But-
loved the baby. I'm just saying the part of her getting pregnant was part of it. She wants that family that she was missing. And so, yeah, I think she loved the baby, but I thought also, like, having that relationship with Joe, she thought perfect world scenario. And the same thing with initially, I mean, she loved the baby, but I think she also thought motherhood was going to be what she talked about in the show, cracked nipples and not sleeping and a colicky baby. I don't think she was expecting all that. She was thinking rainbows and sunshine instead of what she was actually getting. But I still think she loved the child. I just don't think she was hoping for Joe being this excellent father who immediately was attached to the baby, and she didn't have to worry about any of the negative effects of just having a baby.
Yeah.
And so I think she was disappointed by it. I don't think she didn't not love the child. I just don't. She just had a higher expectation of what motherhood was going to be in her mind before the baby was born.
I just kind of felt like the baby was just another way of her to try to control Joe and manipulate him. I
think that too, but I don't think that she loved the baby, but still, it was a good thing.
I don't know, the baby felt like a pawn. Just, I don't know.
Aren't they all? No, I'm kidding.
Oh, wow. We do love children, everybody. We do love children. I just want to say that.
I did not differ.
Oh, I'm kidding.
But-
My child doesn't hear this. Okay.
Yeah, please don't let your child hear this. Please. We love children. We do. We promise.
we really
But
do.
Staci
Some of them.
kind of brings up an interesting point, which segues for me into season 3, is that Love had this picture of family and wanted this family, hence why I think they moved out into this suburban small town that we see in season 3. And you have this kind of idealized, picturesque kind of thing happening at the end of season 2. And so, we know that they're going to the suburbs, actually get to season 3 and this idealized picture and this small town. And we come across these rather crazy, messed up people. A little bit, I had a flashback of Mean Girls when I met Sherry, or when we first saw, the Conrads. You just kind of feel like, okay, this is not as idealized as you thought. So season 3, the town of season 3, the people in season 3, what did y'all think about that?
No, I'm just gonna say that I liked it. Like I mean, again, like I said earlier, I was concerned about how this was gonna play out, and so I feel like the way they did it and the way they wrapped it up, I mean, just an overall thought, I thought it was good. We're back to the Joe that I met initially, and I'm excited to see like where he's gonna go from that. In terms of, did you say her name was Sherry, the married couple?
Yes,
Influencer.
Sherry and Carrie. Carrie is
Carrie,
the guy.
They were comic relief for me in the
They
show.
were funny.
So that's kind of, especially when they got locked up together
Yes.
in the cage, you really see their relationship in its truest form, right? So I felt like their whole, well, let me not say whole, but a big part of their role to me just in the show is just comic relief. Are they in book 3 or anything?
No.
Okay.
They're not in book 3 in that sense.
Okay.
The characters are named Melinda and Seamus, and actually they're not like that. Melinda is very much a mean girl like Sherry, kind of like, but she's more so like an influencer. You kind of get that Peach Salinger feeling from Melinda in the book. And then Seamus is Seamus is bad. And unfortunately they both end up dead in the book, but unlike Sherry and Carrie, who almost killed each other, it seemed like, but but ended up surviving.
Look, it
But
makes on the outside, you would think that they were probably as fake as nails, as in press-ons. But at the
yes,
same time, but once they got into that cage, you're right. It's like their true selves kind of surfaced, and you saw the
right.
dysfunction between the two.
Right. Their survivalist selves and their whole dynamic. And it's like, okay, we see why you bring other people into your open relationship.
Right, because it was
Yeah.
almost like they
They
hadn't
messed
had a
up.
conversation in 15 years. I mean, because they really didn't know the core of each other anymore. Like they
Right.
only had been sending their representatives to dinner for the last 10 years. Like had to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially Sherry, because she was real. Like you could, I mean, her persona versus who she was when it came down to kill or be killed, she was sending her representative everywhere. But her real self was, I think, was somebody I could have liked. I just didn't meet her until until I already disliked her. But
Right. Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think in the neighborhood and in all the relationships, like I said, I think it was fun to see just how much havoc one couple could wreak on the neighborhood. That and I agree, they probably were dysfunctional before they got there, but nobody was dead, and I feel like that
Right.
counts for something.
Yeah, nobody was there. But
Nobody
yeah,
was dead.
imagine in the book, Joe wreaks all of that havoc in the book because love is not actually there in book 3. But he wreaks all kinds of other havoc. But the whole small town dynamic, I agree with Dana, and when I saw that the book was going that way too, I was like, now how are you gonna do this? This can't happen to Joe because I just don't see him settling down. And even in the book, he didn't have the child in the book. Love had the child, and they were keeping the child away from Joe. It was kind of a blackmail kind of situation. And what he did was he moved so he could try to, make a home for the kid. And I was thinking, this is really not going to work out for Joe. And in the show, when he meets Marianne, the librarian, and I'm thinking, oh, this is really not going to work out. All these people have kids. This is small town suburbia, and people are just being killed left and right. And I'm like, Joe's going to jail. I mean, in this show, Joe's going to jail. And then somehow, with the finale was amazing. I'm like, that was some craziness. That was some crazy, amazing stuff. I was just like, my mouth was just open the whole time. It seemed like at the very end, like when they had their dinner, and blew up everything. It was like my mouth was just like open. But yeah, I was like, this whole small town thing, it was kind of comic relief to a certain extent. And it kind of dulled the whole killing part a little bit for me. It was almost like this is sort of becoming a farce a little bit. But then, some of the more serious things started coming out in the end, especially with Sherry, like you were saying, Pam, with Sherry and Carrie and the cage and Marcie. And their whole showing their whole dynamic and their whole dysfunction, coming out. And then the dysfunction that's happening in Love and Joe's life. And there's that whole throwaway plot with Love and the neighbor kid, Theo.
Right, that was that was weird.
That
But
was
again,
just a
they
throwaway
had
plot.
already destroyed that household. Did they need to do it to everybody? I mean, it was
Right,
just,
exactly, because
And she was doing
the
But you had-
husband
you
was
had
all
to-
messed up, y'all.
I guess
mean,
for the ending though, you had to get the stepfather involved. So you had to figure out their relationship, and that he really did love his stepson and blah 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 blah. So I guess you really did have to try to get there because you needed the stepfather to be, because he's the one that found Joe. Like you needed that dynamic, I guess.
it's a whole
But I feel
plot
like we could have got there
device.
without some more pedophilia in life. But
she became the babysitter, basically.
right, she became
That's exactly
Right.
what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
Stacy.
So that's what I'm saying. It was really odd. And but she didn't see anything wrong with it. It was very, but I would like to go back to
Yeah.
Sherry and Carrie for just a minute and say that I honestly feel like if those scenes with them in the box had been in any other show but this one, somebody would have got an Emmy nomination for that acting. especially Sherry. I thought she was really good, and those are the moments where I forgot how ridiculous everything else was
They
because
were.
she really. And so I really feel like I just needed to call out those scenes were so brilliantly acted in the box that I just had to call that out because the rest of it does seem over the top, but those moments were flawless. Like those were really dramatic, well acted, and I think they should get some credit in the rest of these shenanigans for being really strong acting that carried some of the other less believable pieces.
When you first meet them, they come across as a farce, to me. Or like I was saying, Mean Girls. They just come across as these are caricature over the top people. And then the whole scene where they end up before they end up in the box, the whole supposed to be group sex scene thing where that was just ridiculous over the top. And it's just like, okay, these people are just straight ridiculous here. I think I'm supposed to be laughing, but I'm kind of disgusted at the same time. It's like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel. But you're right. When they get into the box and they start breaking down and their relationship starts becoming stripped bare, that's some good TV right there. And you're right. They did act that really well. I was like, because at that point, if you were in that situation, this is like the level that this is what would happen. You feel like this is what would happen. It's just like so very real watching them go through that.
They should get a spin-off show.
They should get a spin-off show? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would be interested to see where they go from here.
I agree, Dan. So I would be interested to see where they go to. Like I said, I mean, the acting was really good and their dynamic was pretty interesting. I'd like to see, like Dana said, how do you rebuild from those truths in that moment?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good show.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Write it, Yvonne.
Oh boy. Like we said, there are differences between books and screenplays, and I'm not necessarily a screenwriter, although that that is something that I've thought about. But so there's one other character. Let's just talk love interest in general for a second. So we've already talked about love. Mm-hmm. Do we have anything to say about Beck other than she's annoying us sometimes?
They first tried to play her initially, I guess, as sympathetic in a way. But then the more we delve into her, you see that she's just, she's not a great person. She's not anyone that I would admire. She lied about her dad being dead. She did cheat on, I don't say I love Joe, but she did cheat on him with the doctor.
She did.
But at the same time, she was being manipulated by Peach.
Yeah.
And falling for it. I have mixed feelings about her. But I guess it's more mixed feelings for her than Love, who I was like, good grief. Out of all the three, the love interest, I like the last one better, the librarian.
So that's Marianne. So that's
that's the one
the last love interest. And so what we see kind of at the end is Marianne, she's gone to Paris, and we see that Joe is following. So what do we think about that relationship, about the Marianne Joe relationship?
It's not gonna last.
I honestly thought about that if another season comes up, that we're gonna see him by himself in some bookstore, and we're not gonna hear from her about her again. Oh, but yeah, I just never thought that would even manifest to anything.
But I'm really glad that actress, because I liked her in Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Oh, she was in that? Okay.
She was in that? Oh, okay.
But so Marianne, I think with Marianne, just like kind of in that third book with Mary Kay, she's just a little bit different kind of person for Joe. I'm having a hard time
Some people
like
don't believe
her
she was
for
the
him,
type.
but I don't like the fact that he likes her because I know who he is. You know what I'm saying?
She didn't need to be caught up in any more drama. She had had enough with the ex-husband. So I just didn't, I was kind of glad when, she went on her way.
Right.
But when we
to
first
the
meet
free.
these women, I mean, I don't know. I expect to find out more about her, and she's not as likable maybe as a character because that's how I feel like all his girlfriends have been. Like at first we don't really know them. They just say, "Oh, she likes books. That's nice." And then we may think they're okay, but then we realize, "Oh, you're not a good person either." So
Right.
I don't expect her to stay that way, I guess. And there were some times I don't know, I don't want to say that I felt she was needy, but sometimes there were things about her that I just felt like, ugh, girl, can't you deal with this, take care of it? Did she whiny? I don't know what it was. It was just something about it. And that just, I don't know if that's going to play out and be something later. I don't know. But I didn't think, she was that great either. So, and maybe these are just human traits. Nobody's perfect. So she's definitely not on love or Beck's scale, but she was a little bit whiny to me at times, and I just felt like I needed her to man up and handle her situation.
Well, at least
I saw some of that. But Staci?
I think we don't want a perfect. There's not gonna be anyone who's perfect. Right. But at least to me, she didn't have she didn't have she did have a red flag, her husband, her ex-husband. But the other ones had like red flag. She lied about, she made her dad die,
But I'm wondering if we're just not getting to her red. That's
maybe
what
we haven't gotten to her stuff yet.
But
at this point, I didn't see there was. She did own up to that. She was on drugs for a bit, and then she got off and turned her life around. So I think it did show that she did have issues, and then that she did make changes to her life. That she is improving herself or trying to improve herself. And maybe that's the same thing they did, like for Joe, kind of a thing, is just making her more sympathetic in that way. That we saw that she's not a perfect person, and he saw that she wasn't a perfect person, but at least she's trying to make a better life for herself and her child versus I'm going to kill my way out of this situation.
Right. Yeah. So we talked a lot about this show, y'all. A lot about this show. It does have 3 seasons, and there is a lot going on in each of these seasons. There are a lot of things happening. To wrap it up, what do we give these seasons or this series what kind of rating do we give it, and will we watch season 4 whenever that happens? So our Goodreads rating system, even though we know it's for books, we're going to use it for this. 1 star, we didn't like it. 2 stars, it was okay. 3 stars, we liked it. 4 stars, we really liked it. Or 5 stars, it was amazing. Staci, your mic is open, so you go first.
Oh, sorry. Sorry. I would say 4 stars. I'm not saying that 5 stars is like what is amazing.
It was amazing. Yes.
I wouldn't say it was amazing, but 4 stars because I wanted to see the next season. I'm not saying that I'm not sure how the 4th season could go because how the 3rd one ended. And I'm not sure how they're gonna do that. Was it renewed for a 4th season? Are we sure? Did they say?
I will look that up, but I am not sure.
But I would say at the very least 4 stars.
Okay, what do we think? Star rating, Pam?
Before this week, I probably would have said a 4. I'm probably now a 3 that I liked it, but the only piece I'm torn about is how much I enjoyed it, but then also just thinking about how reality is and how there's so much killing and everything. And the one that hits me the closest right now is pastor here in Atlanta that got killed. She was helping out a gentleman, counseling him or supporting him, and he stabbed her to death, took her body in her van and burned her to death and just left her. When I hear crazy stuff like that, it makes me, look back and say, you know what, Pam, this stuff is real. I know that you was not real, but for me to just kind of fall into that and love it like that really bothers me to a degree. So I'm gonna stick with a 3. I did like it. Makes me nervous, but I did like it.
Right. Okay. Marcie, how about you?
So I did check, and yes, there will be a You season 4, and the filming has already started for that season. So yes, there will be a season 4 of You. As for my rating, I would give it a 4. I did really like it. I did want to see the next episode when it was running, and I am interested to see what season 4 is going to do. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a strong 4.
All right, Dana.
Well, now that Pam has said what she's
Oh
saying,
my!
Don't listen to me.
I know.
That's my
Pam's
girl.
rating. That is
'Cause I
Pam's
felt like,
rating.
let me. I would just be honest, and Staci probably knows this just from our podcast for movies. But I see this stuff. It's pure entertainment. It takes me away from the real things that are going on in the world. So while I may joke about stuff, I am aware that there are real things going on in the world and horrible things going on to people in the world. But honestly, when I set this aside and don't think about that, and I'm just focusing on what I'm watching and, what I think is interesting or entertainment, I mean, I would give this a 4. I'm very much entertained by it but solely because I don't think about it being real world at this point. There's no way Joe would just have gotten away with, a couple scrapes, a few toes, missing a finger, or whatever. I'm aware that this is fictitious. So I just looking at it like that from an entertainment perspective, I would give it a 4. But again, I will say, at least for the first book, it may be worth just listening to having him talk to you. So you can really, because I wonder how people's perspectives would change if you had that more intimate feeling of having him talking with you versus just watching it on the screen. But yeah, I mean, I would give it a 4. I'm definitely going to watch season 4 to see where it goes. But again, it can't be a long lasting love and relationship,
Right.
Where's the fun in that? So
yeah, right,
exactly.
Yeah.
And I would also like to.
That's cool. I like.
I would also like to put that caveat in there that my rating is from an entertainment perspective, not a reflection of reality. But if in terms of entertainment value, I give it a 4.
All right, so we've got ratings here. I'm gonna actually give it a 4 because I thought that it was entertaining. I like the layers of story that happens, but also because, well, hopefully not, won't see love anymore. I mean,
it's funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
There's some fan somewhere that has a screen picture of just outside the restaurant or whatever.
That's what I'm talking about. Yep.
It was like, is this love? No, it's dang well better not be love.
It better not be. Right, exactly.
Love is
it
dead.
better not be. But we're not gonna give into that. We're not gonna give into
that. Come on, you've already dragged up an old girlfriend who was dead and brought her back. I don't think you can keep doing this in every season.
Right, exactly.
I mean, because now I'm going to start believing that nobody he kills is actually dead anymore and that he's not even a murderer.
Exactly.
She's not human.
Yeah.
That's I'm sorry.
This is a whole new thing. Okay.
Right. But yeah, other than that, I'm excited to see what happens with season 4, especially considering that right now there is no book 4. So it's like, I don't know if there will be a book 4 at that time, but it'll be interesting, and I can kind of let go a little bit and see kind of where they go. I have a little bit more separation anxiety than Marcie does about books / TV / movie kinds of things. It's entertaining in general, and yes, I agree, you do have to kind of divorce that realistic moral part of you to be entertained in this show. I thought it was pretty entertaining, and it's an interesting kind of concept, and no, it's not nerdy, no, it's not romantic, but it's an interesting relationship dynamic that goes on in all of these seasons that I'm just like, wow, really? That kind of keeps me watching. Dana, Marcie, Pam, Staci, thank you so much for talking with me about You and for convincing me, because I think it was really Staci who kind of convinced me, hey, you might want to do this. But for convincing me to do this podcast episode, because it was really interesting. It was a really fun chat. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Our next episode will be to be determined. So subscribe to get that next episode whenever it drops. It will be something nerdy or something romantic, because You is still filming, so we want to see you there. So that's all for this episode. We've got a new website at nerdyromanticspodcast.com. But don't fear, all of our episodes and their show notes are on our new website. While you're there, please consider donating to our podcast with the donate button at the top right-hand corner or the buy me a coffee button on the show notes for each episode. Your donations go straight to keeping this podcast on the air and keeping all of our episodes out there for you to listen to whenever you want to. If you want to get our show notes in your inbox, please consider signing up for our Nerdy Romantics newsletter. The sign-up form is at the bottom of each page on our new website. Thank you for listening.